Hello and welcome to another exciting edition. At least, yeah, this is going to be exciting. Edition of Clifton's Clicks, your Cliff Notes to the Cosmos. And I am your host, Clifton. Of course. This edition is sponsored by water. Gotta get that water in you. And in this edition, hopefully you've been watching the foundational series, and what I would call the more advanced topics have been sort of these past few episodes. The foundation is about the upgraded operating software coming from one worldview, a very limited worldview, towards an awakening and upgraded way of viewing and perceiving reality with a greater awareness and ability to have responsibility for your thoughts, words, and actions, as well as your lifestyle, and a way to understand how different operations in life work. And then the next part was getting sort of out there, literally, to the akasha, the etheric field, whatever you want to call it, that resonates with your worldview, to explain a bit of channeling and what quantum downloading might be. And the difference between channeling is embodying, and quantum downloading is accessing that frequency state. Um, and there's been some interesting discoveries that I've made or that have manifested in my reality, explaining a bit of the dangers of adjusting the DNA through embodying and channeling live, rather than quantum downloading, which is great. It's sort of what I felt, and as I guess the world works, you manifest your reality and what you want, and I guess I was looking for that. However, in the frame that it was all explained to me, um, it made perfect sense, and was a more coherent understanding. And without going into it into too much detail, what happened was, when you upgrade the operating software, in order to make that leap to that next level of, do you want to upgrade your operating software? Yes, no, later. Remind me tomorrow. Remind me in a day. Um, the upgraded software has to be fully integrated with the previous software, which is a bit different in today's install matrices, or in the way our computer programming goes. Is you would do reverse functionality for previous operating software, except you can only go back so far, until you have to really make an intentional effort to make your operating software compatible to the previous editions. So, for example, does Windows 11, or whatever the most recent Windows thing is it compatible with software programs that came out in 1998? Does it work with my FIFA 98? Maybe, but most likely not. I would have to get a special software to run it. And this is the case with video game emulators, where I was actually able to play one of my favorite childhood games growing up, 007 GoldenEye, on N64. I was able to play that on my computer through what's called an emulator. And without going into too much detail, it's just a software program that allows me to run older software, or software that may not be perceived as compatible. However, with an upgraded hardware, with this software added to it, I could play these more antiquated programs, or programs, and it'd be fun. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed James Bond growing up. Now maybe not so much, but back then it was awesome. And the fact that you get all your N64 games on your computer is an incredible thing. Now you can get a lot of them on your phone, because that hardware is much more advanced than what it was created on. So there is something called reverse compatibility. And when you upgrade your operating software, in order to find a very successful through line to understand and explain this new upgraded software, as well as maintain coherence with your previous software, it is to make sure that it is backwards compatible. That when you upgrade it, it doesn't completely change your previous understanding. Now, of course, it might prune some things, mark off some things and point out errors of certain ways and paths that the previous operating software had. But for the most part, the core wisdom, core truths are coherent in this upgraded operating software. And so, how I would define it is the ability to understand and start to receive information of not just how the world works from a quantum perspective, but how the cosmos works from a quantum perspective. Doing the Akashic readings and accessing that sort of opened up this exploration and ability of an awareness of maybe not ability, but an awareness of things outside of the Earth plane. And so what was building inside of me was a desire to understand more of this cosmic world in a cohesive narrative that was beautifully applied to the other operating softwares that I've been upgrading or upgraded into my current state. And so in this level of cosmic downloads, the awareness of different solar systems, black holes, and things of that nature from a cosmic level start to come into coherence and with a integrity to the microscopic, the rules and principles of sacred geometry and vibrational frequency being held in coherence when it's expanded to a cosmic perspective. And the reason why that is important is it's not completely shifting everything that I've learned thus far, not forcing me to let go of everything and actually let go of nothing. It only further supports me. In a way, it's kind of like building like a Lego, or I loved building Connects as a kid. And you might be building like one piece a lot, and then you would stop and work on another piece. And when you combine those two big pieces that you created, making sure that all the joints fit, connections fit, like all the pieces were matching or could sink in, or like a transformer, like those, or Power Rangers, right? How you have one, machine, the Red Ranger, and then Pink Ranger, Yellow Ranger, they all have their machines, and then when they combine, they create that one big transformer, Power Ranger. I'm dating myself here a bit, yes. But when that happens, you want to make sure it's fully integrated, because, if the interfaces of them don't work, then you have to either go through some sort of, you got to fix it so that it does, it does match, or there's just additional work that's needed. And so when it fits beautifully and smoothly, that's a really nice indicator that this upgrade is going to be successful. I mean, for example, I upgraded my Mac software, and my program that I run these videos in was not compatible, and so I had to create a workaround. I had to go into the terminal and type in the actual code and bypass certain restrictions in the terminal in order to play this, and sometimes that happens. It doesn't mean it's not accurate, it just means you have to fix a few things. So that being said, what was really exciting is that a lot of the studying on the micro level, remember that sort of drew me through this path as I was going from the human to the smallest and then from human to the largest. It created that beautiful fractal understanding that further supported not just how the cosmos works in the different planet structures, as well as the different dimensions of reality, but also how sacred geometry and how specific plants and animals get their geometric shapes with sacred geometry. And what's beautiful too is that there are studies and papers and books written about how specific plant and animal behaviors, organizational behaviors, which are mapped on a sacred geometry framework, are actually applied to how we as a society operate. And one of the things that I may not have covered a bit is how you can start to see larger energy bodies interact in a very cohesive manner. Of course, we have ourselves, and we have our house as an energy. You go into like a part of the world that has an energy. Same thing. Your company has an energy. You walk into a church, it has a very different energy than you walk into a nightclub. You walk into one restaurant versus another restaurant. They all have different energies. And as you build this energetic sensitivity and awareness, you start to pick up on this. And there's a specific um, frequency and energy that you are exposing yourself to when you go into these places, whether you're there to consume food or have fun at a party or entertain yourself. It also applies to the business that you are operating in, and that's really the area of focus that I'd love to dive into at a later date. What I want to focus on before we get to larger organized systems. Yes, a burp. I burp anytime there's a lot of energy coming through me, and I'm like digesting it. Because what I wanted to talk about is the energetic signature of companies and the intentions and how that comes, and that'll come later. For now, we're focusing on us as the individuals. So we understand everything is vibration at its core. We understand ourselves as vibration, and one of the things that we mentioned with the structured water device, which pause for some delicious structured water again. We'll add placement. So good, is when you look at what might be called the Merkaba or energy field, there's two components to it. There is the electronic force, and then there's the magnetic force, or one that is frequency and energy, and the other one that is mass and matter, and they fuse together. And what is really exciting is that you need both in order for it to fully sustain itself. And when we talked about the water structuring device, it did both. It physically structured it and it energetically charged it. And when you recognize that we might have our light body, people have different diagrams of what the body is. And one is definitely the physical body, right? Like gravitational pull pulling us down, or how would we want to refer to whatever that force enacting upon us to step on ground. And then we have the energetic body, because everything is energy. The question is, how do you encapsulate that energy? And yes, that's where, because if we're all just energy, we're all just floating. But hey, I got a face, right? I got hands. And they have a specific configuration. Kind of weird, kind of alien-like. Anyway, we are held in a specific container, right? And that container is where you start to understand the aspect of physical matter, and that's where a lot of electromagnetic pulses, not just vibrational pulses, start to really come into consideration, because we have electrical charges within our body and vibrational frequency. And so our body is a light body, like we have vibrational frequency, but it is being held. Like my face is not this big, it's this big, because of specific forces acting upon it, so I can move. And there's specific energy that can interact within this space. And of course, I can let energy go through me, like if I got or maybe a hand would be better. If I had an x-ray, the energy would flow through me, but there's certain frequencies that won't go through me, or would get distorted a lot. Like if I shined a light in my hand, you might be able to see a little bit of light coming by, but my hand would stop it. And what's interesting and exciting about this is that where we're going to go with it is the realization of the interface and interplay between gravitational or electromagnetic forces and vibrational forces, is that everything is vibration. What gives us the uniqueness and ability to hold ourselves in and have specific physical objects is our our electromagnetism and sort of what you might call the bottom sphere of the Merkaba, which is kind of like two pyramids stacked on top of each other, kind of forced through the middle, kind of like a Star of David if you made that from a two-dimensional to a three-dimensional object, um, which starts to hold some pretty cool, profound meaning in that. When you look at it from that perspective, you start to recognize, and I myself, as sort of a self-experimenter, recognize the difference in transference of, or just sort of explain better what happened. Like when I went on that 21-day water fast, yes, I was energetically awake, I was energetically charged, I went through incredible completion and healing work. I was getting all the minerals I needed, and there was something affecting my physical mass. And ultimately, we can resort back to breatharian, live with just breathing. Us getting there is challenging, and it requires a change of lifestyle and a change of environment for people to get there, because it's just not conducive. The collective consciousness has specific thought currents and understandings, and has a specific gravity about it, that once there's enough uh, energy and consistent. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so we have our energetic body, and of course we have our light body and our mass body. When we walk around in our DNA, we hold specific structures and specific thought currents which help construct who we are, and ways in which we operate. Now, of course, there's specific genetics and DNA that give me my hazel eye colors, give me my blonde hair. It makes me a male, right? But there's also so much more incredible information in our DNA that, of course, through epigenetics, it's showing that we can actually, up to 13 or 14 generations, we hold and store our ancestors' DNA in us. And that's at least the most recent finding, and they'll find more and more that it goes back quite a long time. So there's DNA in us that, as I mentioned, I hope I mentioned, is that when you have a specific vibratory current, it attracts an equal and opposite current that is harmonious and resonant with that initial thought current, which over time, or when it transcends through the time dimension, which we are constrained in, or we operate in, we can exit out of a time dimension and enter back into it. But this manifest world is a time dimension. When it holds over time, and it starts to spiral as the Earth and the cosmos starts to spiral with it. Like, we are a bunch of spins. Like, that's really directional spin is really what creates the three-dimensional extraction out of the two-dimensional, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever played with paper. I had one of those notebooks where it had sort of you could pull it out and then pull the paper out, and then you'd be left with this like thin strip of paper, and you kind of fold it in half, and all of a sudden it creates an accordion. Oh man, those are some good times. Well, that's how you can make a two-dimensional shape, which is the paper, into a three-dimensional shape, which is that accordion. I used to play with that in school all the time because I was a little bored. I mean, come on, who hasn't played with that? But that's how sound becomes DNA, or information encoded in DNA, and our bodies have all that DNA in it, or have DNA, and that DNA is specific vibratory information that is encoded and encapsulated in such a way that allows it to operate in this realm and in this field, which is why you have DNA of particular organic material, everything from like cats to trees to humans, is because there's a certain frequency of information that is stored and is able to be captured, encapsulated, in which we start to be able to observe behaviors, and start to classify. That's a cat. Why is it a cat? Because it's got cute little ears and it likes to take naps in the middle of the day, right? Why is that a frog? Because it looks like this and ribbit. Well, all of that information that we see with our sights and our ears, and we observe over time to give it characteristics and personality traits. Like, why does our cat want to eat food at 11 o'clock at night and wake us up at 4 a.m.? because it's an integrity cat and wants us up for yoga at 4 a.m., right? I love you, Micah. But these behaviors are encapsulated in the genetic encoding of, of the DNA that is encapsulated and held in a specific form that we use our senses to observe and interact in the day-to-day world with and be able to recognize and identify. And so when you look at, say, I'm looking at our cute little cat taking a nap on the couch. Right? Yeah, our cat, not the cat that we raise. Okay, changed, of course. Yeah, she looks right at me. She knows I'm talking about her. When we look at a cat, we call it a cat. We understand how cats act. We've been programmed since birth, since childbirth. Like, if you think about it, we come into this birth with a mother. We are physically unable to sustain ourselves after birth for quite some time, and it's kind of getting longer in time in which we're capable, although society is what constructs that, not necessarily our genetics. But we need the mother to model ourselves after, and the mother's milk to sustain ourselves biologically. But then that allows us to observe how the mother acts. And then we come to, and we typically have a father figure, or we have a parental figure if we want to be politically correct. And so, and in the absence of that, we have some personal development challenges that we have to fix later on, or we have to find a substitute for that, which is why being a great mentor and role model is really important for our society. And then we learn how the family operates, and then we build our habits and behaviors off of that. And of course, you have the exploration of that's based off of your inherited epigenetics and your past life karma and all these things, which is fine. The main point is you observe your family behavior, and then you enter into a larger group, whether it's like a nursery school or public school, and that's a larger organization, and we start to get embedded into our minds how we should function in society in order for us to be accepted, approved, survive. And then from there, we go from one organization, which is a school, which as a child, you're like, wow, this is big. This is way bigger than, just my brother and sister and my parents. No, this is a school with like 32 children or 100 children. And then it's like, whoa, no, it's like not just my class. It's like the entire school, which is like 1,000 people. And then you think that's big. And then you're actually going to high school, in which there's a whole new social dynamic. And you thought, like, in 6th, 7th grade or whatever, that you were the king on the campus, and then you go to a bigger campus, and then you realize you're the small fish, in the pond. And then from there, you might go to a college, and then you might go to an organization, and each level of these organizations are pruning you and creating your specific view of the world, and either rewarding or punishing you for how you behave, think, and act. And when you get into the organizational level, the culture of your organization, regardless of what you work on, is going to impact you. Your personality and what you might find naturally drawn to is going to perhaps identify the role you might play and the department you might play. But the culture is that overarching society that is being embedded in you, that you are energetically exposed to for hours on end. We spend most of our waking time as adults at work. I mean, of course, there's a change and a shift in the workplace, which we're now able to work in co-working spaces or primarily from home or work remotely, which is great. But for a vast majority, it's still working in your company's culture. Or more challenging is you are basically shipped off as a consultant or as a service provider, vendor, to other companies. And so then you get exposed to their cultures, and you get exposed to their cultures from an energetic perspective. And that's what it is. The way people view each other, the reason why they were attracted to the company in the first place, all creates an energetic environment, an ooze that you walk right into. Walk into a law firm, and you're like blown away. You just look, and of course everyone's dressed in a certain way. There's marble, there's big desks, all these things, and that creates an energy. You walk into a startup, there's a specific energy. And a lot of this has to come from the actual intention of the company itself and the vibrational frequency of that intention that the founders and the organizers and the shareholders all have to support that thought current. And each individual who goes in there starts to exude or to receive that thought current energy, whether or not they are aware of it or not, whether or not they are aware of it. And so the mechanisms by which, and now we'll go through it really quickly. I'll go somewhere else then. I won't get to that point yet. Geez, okay, where are we going? And so what you have to understand is that even the thought currents of what you choose to go work for is vitally important to your own energetic health. And it's not to say that from a supremacy level that there's one company or one industry that's better than the other. Not at all. They're all incredibly vital and important. Such as I think I may have mentioned that, like, you might perceive being in construction is lower vibe because you're like getting dirty and you're building things, rather than like marketing, which is all thought currents and like everything's pretty and shiny. Not at all. It's the intention and the vibrational frequency of that intention, of the founder of that company, and the collective consciousness that embodies that company, which determines the vibrational frequency. And what is that? What does that energy entail? It entails the founder's intention, the original intention, what frequency that is on, the vibrational frequency that the thought current is on. That's one. One. Two, the vibrational frequency of the founder and how much it aligns with his or her mission and what they want to provide them with either a passion with fulfillment or not. Because the idea that someone takes may not actually be his or hers to pursue. It may actually be someone else's perfect plan, but that person took it. And so it's not a full harmonious match. And it's kind of like, yeah, this was a good idea. We made a lot of money. I just don't feel fulfilled. Those are the moments where it's like, dude, you picked up the wrong thought current to run with. Not saying it's a bad thing. It's not really. It's a learning lesson, and perhaps there might be another thought current for the person who really wanted it. However, what I'm saying is that the founder must be fully on board and super excited, because if the founder and the people, so founder and then top level executives as well as the investors, and that is super key, is the investors. And I went on a talk about the investors in a previous date. But let me ask you a question. Are you going to be super excited coming into work if your boss is really upset about coming into work? No. Because if your boss is upset about coming into work, he or she is going to make sure you do not have a good time. Just saying. When you are around that boss, you're going to feel it. In that boss's email, you're going to feel it. And it's coming from a hierarchical top-down distribution. So if your boss isn't happy, regardless of how happy, high vibe, and energized you might be, when you interact with your boss, or even if you don't interact with your boss and you enter into this space, you will feel that boss's negative energy. Why? Because it's been hierarchically established that it's a top-down approach of the energy. So if your boss's boss isn't happy, well, your boss's boss is going to make sure your boss isn't happy, which is really going to make sure you're not happy. And so go all the way to the top. And if the top brass, if the top executives aren't happy, the organization is not going to be happy, which is why it is so incredibly vital that the executives be so passionate, motivated, and loving of what they are doing that they take that energy and exude it through their underlings, through their direct reports, and then them to their direct reports. And that's what's going to create that special energetic oomph. Regardless of how high vibe that thought current is of the original idea. which is why even if you might be in the most like forward-thinking, progressive, high thought current company, if the founder or if some of the executives aren't feeling like super pumped, super motivated, super integrated, high vibe to work on that, you're going to be affected by that from an energetic perspective. Versus, it might actually be better to go work for a tree landscaping company or a waste removal company, which may not seem glamorous, and it's definitely grounded. Hey, we got trash here. We got to get out of here. We got trees growing, and there's a winter storm coming, so we got to like cut down some of the branches or a windstorm coming. Very grounded. We're not thinking about like, changing the world or playing with cryptocurrency. We're saying, hey, we got winds. We got these Santa Ana winds coming, and we got a bunch of trees that are going to blow all over the place. So we need to trim those, right? Not that high vibe of a thought. Very grounded, right? Very grounded. And once again, vibe is not a judgment. It is just the level of complexity and uniqueness or removedness from like the tangible earth that we are on. And so, and connectedness, right? So we can get into that another time, which I think it does warrant a definition of. But if that company is like tree removal, hey, this is all about community. This is my highest expression. I love trees. I love taking care of families. I love making sure our streets are safe. I love making sure that our trees are happy, that we are using incredible forward-thinking management practices and eco-friendly products and practices. That's a high vibe company right there. The idea, the intention of the company may not be super high vibe because it's very grounded, but the company is being run in a very intentional manner, in a very high vibe manner. If they're really taking care of their employees, they're making sure all their vendors are really up to par on like really conscious practices, then going and working for that company is going to have a much better feel for you than than that previous example of a company who might be working on the most fancy artificial intelligence cryptocurrency type thing, which is like very out there, but the management may not be so happy or successful or integrated, or they might be feeling so much pressure from their investors that it just pushes that energy onto you. Nice breath. The other component is, it's not just the energy and the intention of the company and the employees and maybe sort of the supervisors. It's also the energy of the space, right? And feng shui, they get it. A lot of developments in Singapore and in China, they get it. Built for feng shui, which is science. It's ancient science that we just decided to be like, nah, we're not going to listen to thousands of years of science. We're going to figure out our own system. Which, okay, we'll get there, and we are getting there. It's just we have some pretty ugly un-feng shui buildings and business building practices in the meantime. But if the building is not high vibe, then you're going to feel that too. And so if you have really harsh lighting, that's going to suck energy out of you. Just like if you look at your computer screen late at night, it's shooting so much blue wavelength light that it prevents the stimulation of of melatonin in your system, so that way you can't really go to sleep at night. Same thing, like the energy of the lights that you're exposed to on a day-to-day basis matter. Sunlight is important. We are humans who require sun. I mean, my fair complexion being in New York City, I'm chasing all the sunshine I can get. We're used to being in sunshine. That's important. Grounding, being able to actually like touch the ground or feeling those electrical currents. And of course, we're coming up with all these kinds of technologies to replace us from actually going out on Earth and enjoying Earth, which we can get into why that's happening, but it's essentially creating synthetic artificial life and to create a new level of the matrix reality that we live in, so that way we can exist in basically spaceships. When we ruin Earth's natural resources, we can still survive. But you need grounding, you need sunshine, you need great water. And guess what? We talked about the water. Awesome. But also, you need lights that emit similar wavelengths, or just go out and get sunshine. But short of that, similar wavelengths to the sun. And there's some great technology that has been declassified and commercialized that our nuclear submarines developed for its sailors, because they did not see the sunlight or the surface for up to 6 months at a time, and that can get pretty damaging health and psychologically. And of course, they talk about what is it, seasonal depression disorder, something like that, where if you don't get enough of the specific spectrum of light, you're going to start to be depressed. Yeah, because I'm not in nature, it means I'm like in prison in my cubicle. Anyway, so that's another one. Then there's the amount of chemicals that are in your workplace environment. How many people buy the cheapest cleaning service to spray a bunch of like disinfectant and vacuum things, and just the chemicals in the furniture that are in there, gross, and just like totally damaging the vibes. Then you have airflow. Like, how many places is there like no airflow? Like, I don't know how I did it and how people are expected to operate at their highest when there's no oxygen to breathe. It's just like stuffy. There's a bunch of like allergens in the air. There's dust in the air. I mean, yes, we are humans and we are incredible creatures capable of surviving many different environments. But for people who are investing millions of dollars in corporate wellness and to not think about how the surroundings that their employees work in is something that they should address is just beyond me. Like, let's go spend all this money for this fancy retreat or for this inspirational speaker, but then we're not gonna look at actually the environment in which they work in and like improve the lighting or improve the air that they breathe, or the water that they drink. I mean, another one is the posture, right? How many people are sitting like this, like working, hunched over, typing? I was that way. I mean, I'm still sitting in this chair, and it's, we're designed to move. There's a reason why chairs are constantly being redesigned, because we haven't gotten it right, because it is not aligning our physical anatomy properly. I mean, if we were supposed to sit on a chair, there's a great TED talk about the appropriate mechanics of sitting in a chair, and if we were sitting in a chair properly, we would be actually sitting away from our backrest and forward, engaging our quads and glutes. And we don't do it. I don't do it myself. I mean, we would be sitting on the floor in like full lotus. Except, of course, we don't really have that kind of flexibility. So then we have all these issues, and we wonder why. It's like, well, because you're sitting in that position all the time. So the vibe of your work environment matters as well. So wanted to put that out there. And we're at sort of a late minute mark. I'm going to see if there's anything else. Yes. So, yes. I'll go real short, and I'll probably dive into it even more. Is what does all this boil down to? And what matters? And I will talk about that, how you boil down all these thoughts, all these things I'm talking about into your practical day-to-day. So I'll see you next time for the next Cliff Notes, your Cliff Notes to the Cosmos. Clifton's Clicks, your Cliff Notes to the Cosmos. Man, this name, tongue twister. Where we will dive into the grounded application of all that I have been sharing. And of course, I'll get more into the sky, but for now, I'll root to make sure we are like foundationally secure, locked in, ready to go, and make sure that all the pillars that we've talked about are integrated, that they're clear, because we are basically getting ready for liftoff into the cosmos. So I am excited. I am your host, Clifton Smith. This is Clifton's Clicks, your Cliff Notes to the Cosmos. And as always, I treat you with so much love, gratitude, respect, motivation, and appreciation. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.